the one, the only, Ben Sion.
Good afternoon and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube. Just daf as we continue Masechas Gittin. Today's daf is daf Mem Aleph, number 41. And a great share for you today. Talk about a couple of different things. First of all, making an Evan Aputiki. If you don't ever heard of that term, it's actually a legal term. Apparently, there's a legal term for it. It's called, in Greek, it's hypothek. Basically, designated property collect the loan from if you do not pay, as opposed to a collateral which you actually give to the creditor. This you don't give to the creditor, but you designate it to be assigned for payment if you default on your loan. And we'll talk about owning half an Evid. The concept, if you own half an Evid, is there a concept of owning half an Evid, or is there no concept? And we'll see that Beis Shammai and later Beis Hillel agree that you have to free the Evid in certain circumstances because he has to mekayem the mitzvah, not of pruvu, the mitzvah of lo so vora l'sheves yitzhar. We'll discuss in Yom the difference between the mitzvah of pruvu and lo so vora l'sheves yitzhar. It's a very important shir to understand the mitzvah of pruvu and also the special mitzvah of rabbanon, what it means lo so vora l'sheves yitzhar. I'll give a light to the meaning of the world and the meaning of marriage. Let's get started with the Mishnah, Memo Beis, towards the bottom. Eved sha'asau rabu apotiki la'acherim. His Rav, he took out a loan. He said, if I don't pay you the loan by such and such a date, you can have my Eved. The Eved will be as repayment for the loan. V'shecharo. Someone freed him. We'll see, there's two explanations in the Gemara. Someone freed him. One of these two masters freed him. Sure as I did not Eved, chayav klum. Mikardin, Eved doesn't obligate anything. I'll make tikkun ha'olam because of a takana. Kofin es rabba v'osed osad ben chorin. The kosev shtar chotzi dama. We force his master, his real master, the first master, to free him, give him a get shecher, and he basically is indebted to pay off his value to the master. Rosh Gamliel Omer eino kosev el mashachar. Rosh Gamliel argues, no, the person who writes the get shecher, who is entitled to writes the document of indebtedness that he owes him money, is the Meshachar, the person who freed him. The Eved is not responsible. The Gemara says, Gemara, Eved sha'asau rabotigi v'shechro. Mishechro, who freed him? What are you talking about? Amar Rav is the explanation, Rav Rishon. His first master, the debtor, right, freed him. Sure as it didn't have Eved chayav klum. Really, the Eved does not have to pay back, right? The creditor lost money. He doesn't have to pay him back. The Rabba Shani to the Rabba, like Rabba is teaching. I'm a Rabba hekdesh comes with shekhem raftim midei shivur. If something is set up as an apotiki, set up as designated for payment, and three things happen to it: either it became hekdesh, someone was makdish it, the owner is makdish it, or Pesach came from chametz, or in this case the Eved was the apotiki, and you're meshacher him, you free him. That eludes the concept of shibud. It removes the shibud. I have a lien on that property. The creditor has a lien on this Eved. No longer does he have a lien on the Eved. That's just the way halacha works. It's a deep explanation why this should be. We're not going to get into it over here. Because they made a takana, because what happened? Sometime one day, the second master, the creditor, will find him in the Eved in the marketplace. He'll say, you're my Eved. Kofinas Rabo Sheni. We force the second master, the creditor, to write him a get shecher, even though he does not belong to the second master, because of shtar al damov, and we force the Eved to pay money. I will take out a loan document. He owes money to the second master, who freed him. Rosh Gamliel eina Eved kosev el meshachar. Rosh Gamliel says the person who writes the document of indebtedness is not the Eved. He doesn't owe the money. The Meshachar, the debtor who owed the money, he still owes the money. The Gemara says, Kosev, b'mai kamiflagi. What are they arguing about? B'mazik shibudo shel chavero kamiflagi. They're talking about if someone has a shibud, has a lien on some property, let's say a lien on a house, and someone comes and demazik the house, he demolishes the house. Are you responsible? The marsav are chayav. Right? What happened over here? The Rabbo Rishon was mazik the shibudo shel sheni. He went ahead and freed him. He's mafkia midei shiba. So do you have to pay or not? So according to Shem Gamliel, he has to pay. Mar Savar Potter. Tanakama is Potter, therefore the Eved has to pay. It's Mardami. A statement like this also. That is what they're arguing about. Our Mishnah about Mazik Shibura Shachaver. Ula Amar. Ula gives a different explanation of our Mishnah. Mishecharo. Who is the one who freed him? Rabbo Sheni. The second Rab, the master, the creditor, freed him. Sure as Adin and Eved Chayev Plum in mitzvos. Nothing to do with monetarily. It's talking about in mitzvos. It doesn't work, right? You can't be Meshachar or someone. If I take collateral, and we learned that a collateral, you own the collateral. But if it's just an apodigi, it's still in the rishus of the mal of the lover, the person who borrowed money. So it's not your. You can't be Meshachar. You don't have control over him. Therefore, he's not chayav in mitzvahs, because he's still meaning the mitzvahs of a man, because he's still an eved. He's only chayav mitzvahs like a woman. Right? There was someone who freed him, gave him a get shepherd, so people think he got with Meshachar. We force the one who's in control of him, the first master, the debtor, to free him. The Kosev Shar al Damav. And the person, and he has to write a Shar al Damav, right? Who has to write a Shar al Damav? The slave, right? The slave, he is valued, right? He has to write for a value. He has to write to the first Rebbe, his master, he owes him money, so he has to write a lot of indebtedness to the first master. Shmuel says the one who owes money is the one who freed him. He's the one who forced the situation, and therefore he's the one who technically caused the first Rabbo to free him. We'll talk about the Hezek Shein on Nikar, because he incidentally forced him, the Rabbanan forced him to free him. So therefore, he's responsible for his money, so he pays back the first Rebbe for his Eved. What are they arguing about? They're arguing about Hezek that is not recognizable. Right here, it's not recognizable. When I go ahead and I smash this tripod in front of me, so it breaks in half, it shouldn't break in half, but if it does, then that's Hezek Nikar. Hezek She'eino Nikar. There are examples we'll learn coming up in the Parak on Nizakin, in the next Parak, about if someone has truma and your matami has truma, you can't eat his truma anymore. Truma it's not Kohen not allowed to eat. That's not recognizable in the food. But also here Hezek She'eino Nikar is by basically the second master freeing him. So therefore we force the first master. The Rabbanan coerced him. You're coercing indirectly the first master to free him. So that's Hezek She'eino Nikar. Are you responsible then or not? Mar Savar Shmei Hezek. Right? Rishon will hold his Hezek, and you have to pay him back. Mar Savar Lo Shmei Hezek. And the second master, and the Tanakama says it's not Shmei Hezek, and therefore the second the creditor does not have to pay for it. Ula my time alone Karav. Why did Ula? So we have two explanations of the Mishnah. We have Rav and Ula. Ula, why didn't he say like Rav? Amalacha Sheni Rav Karisla. You can't say that the second one is Rabbo. Right? It says in the Mishnah. What does it say in the Mishnah? Rabbo. It says. Kofin as Rabbo, but also Osel ben Chorin. So according to Rav, Kofin as Rabbo, Osel ben Chorin, that's talking about the second Rav. That's not really his master. His master is always the first one. He was just an apotiki. You can't say Rabbo means the second one. That's why he didn't like Rav's explanation. The Rav might tell him Ula. Why didn't Rav say like Ula? The Mishnah ends off and says, Eno kosev el meshachar. So according to Ula's explanation, right? Meshachar means Meshachar. The second one didn't really free him, right? Meshachar can't mean the second one. According to Ula, that's what it means. But he's not Meshachar him, right? Really, the first one's the only one who can be Meshachar him. It's Let's say someone designates his field as apotiki for other people to collect if he doesn't default on his own. The shot fanar, and the banks of the river over flooded, and they destroyed the field. Ami Shapir Noah, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Eno Go Mishar Nechasim. Ami Shapir Noah, apparently his name was Ami, and he was very good looking. He said to the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Eno Go Mishar Nechasim. That was your field to collect. Now you can't collect from that. You can't collect from his other assets. Avu the Shmuel Amar Go Mishar Nechasim. Avu the Shmuel says no, you could collect from that one is ruined. You can collect from other Nechasim. Amar Rav Nachman Yitzchak, Mishum the Ami Shapir Noahu Amar Shmaisad Lo Shapir, because his name, because he's very good looking, that he say things that are good looking, his words don't make so much sense. He has to explain himself. The reason you can't collect from other properties is only the case where he said, when he made the apotiki, the field apotiki, he said you can only get paid back from this. If he doesn't say that, that means there's a lien on his other property indirectly. Bryce says like this: he makes his field an apotiki for someone else, a shot fanar, and it gets ruined by the river. Go be mishar nechasim. You can collect from other nechasim. Amar lo he lecha piron al mizu, ain't a go mishar nechasim. Then you can't collect. Tanya idach. Oz sadei apotiki lebalchov l'ksuvas isha. He makes his field an apotiki lebalchov, and for a ksuva, or either for a creditor or for a woman to collect a ksuva. Go mishar nechasim. If they want, they can collect from other nechasim. Shem Omer, meaning if there's an unfortunate circumstance like shad fanar. Rishim Lil Omer Balchov Gove Mishar Nechasim. He has the Balchov has to collect from other Nechasim. Isha Ena Gove Mishar Nechasim. She'ein Darcha Shal Isha Lachzar Al Bati Dinim. Right, the woman. Sorry, it's not a case where shot fanar. We're not a case where it got overturned by the river. He sold apotiki. He made apotiki, the field, for the ksuvas isha and for the balchov, and he sold it, right? So, by the balchov, we say collect from other nechasim. In order to collect from the nechasim, you have to go to Beis Din, and you have to validate that he owes you money, and then you have to collect from other nechasim. But the woman, we don't force her. We don't want her to go to Beis Din. And therefore, we say to the woman, you go to the person who was sold to and collect the apotiki from him. And the person who bought the apotiki goes back to the balchov, goes back to the husband, and demands payment. Mishnah says, let's say he's half an avid, half a ben chorin. Now we're going to see later on this is talking about where it's one slave, but he has two masters. One master freedom, one master didn't freedom. So one day he works for himself, one day he works for the master that still owns him. To the content as Rabbi, you fixed it for the master, but he has a problem. Lisa Shivcha Yavshar Shekvar Chetzu Ben Chorin, right? Then Evid or Shivcha can't marry a Bas Yisrael or Ben Yisrael or Ben Chorin. So he can't marry a Shivcha anymore, right? While he was having Knaini, he can marry a Shivcha Knainis. Now he can't marry anymore because half of it is a Ben Chorin, right? He's at least a Suffolk Del Rice, and you go to Chomra. Bas Chorin Yavshar, top Memal of Beis Shekvar Chetzu Evid. He can't marry a woman who's a bas chorin because he's half an evet. Let's say, let him just be unproductive, not be together with anyone, not marry any woman. The whole world was created to be fruitful and multiply. What's the source of this? It says in the Navi, the world was not created for nothing. It was created to be settled. In order, part of being in the world being settled is having a wife. So therefore, we force the second master to free him, and the Eved owes him the money for half of his value. Beis Hillel eventually agreed to Beit Shammai made sense. The Gemara says, now, here we're talking about not like the Mishnah where we're talking about Shutfin. Here we're talking about he has one Eved, and I say let's say the Eved worth $100. It's a Mashachar half of you. $50 worth. Rabbi Omer Kana. Rabbi Omer says the Eved actually acquires $50 worth of his own self. The other $50 of himself is still Meshubad. He's still a slave to the owner. But Chamim lo Kana. Chamim say, no, he's still a full slave. I'm a Rabbi. Rabbi says, Machlokes b'shtar. Machlokes Rabbi and the Chamim is when he tried to emancipate half of him with the shtar. The Rabbi Savar, v'hiftel lo nifdasa, o chuv shalom lisama. This is pasuk in Parashat Kedoshim. Talks about a shivcha charufa. And half day lo nifdasa, the Gemara is going to interpret meaning that part of her was redeemed and part of her wasn't redeemed with money. Chuv Shalom Nisan is talking about a star that would emancipate her. Makin star lekesef, the pasuk compares, right, freeing her with a document, with a star, and freeing her with money. Makesef bein kula ben chetio, just like it's obvious that money you can free half of her with. Af star nami bein kula ben chetio. So too with the star, you can free half the Evid. Rabbanan Gamri La La Isha. They said Xer Shava. It says La. Chuf Shalom La. And it says La because of law, save increases by a woman. Ma Isha Chestil Lo. Just like a woman, she can't, no one can have ownership over half of her, right? The Gemara in Maseches Kedushin and Daf Zayin says that a woman can't mekadesh half of her herself because she can only be married to one person. So Af Evan Nami Chestil Lo. So therefore also for him, half is not valid. Ava Bekesef, when it comes to Kesef, Rabbah says Zivrei Akol Kana. Everyone agrees that he could acquire half of himself. Why? P'duya me'ena p'duya. The pasuk says, right, redeemed but not redeemed, redeemed and not redeemed. Half of him is redeemed, so you see half of him can redeem with kesef, with money. However, a get shukr doesn't work for half of them. What are they arguing about? Rabbi and Rabbana. The Mar Savar Kesha Adifa. Mar Savar Gzera Shada Adifa. Right? One opinion holds that the hekesh, right? That's what Rebbe says. Rebbe says the hekesh works. Compare shtar to kesef. Kesef works partially. Shtar also works partially. And the Ramah says Gzera Shava. The Gzera Shava tells you it limits it just like a woman, right? She can't have half. Also, an Evid can't have half, at least by a shtar. The Ramah says low. The Chuli Alma Gzera Shava Diva. When you have a possibility of darshaning something the hekesh or Gzera Shava is a stronger one. The shiny hacha. Here we don't use the Gzera Shava. At least the Rabbanan don't use the Gzera Shava. Dikal Mifrach. There's a problem with the Gzera Shava. Mal Isha. Shekanan Yotze Bekesef. Tomer Be'evish Yotze Bekesef. Sorry, the reason Rebbe rejects the Gzera Shava is because, and uses the Hekesh, is because the Gzera Shava is a problem. You can't make a comparison to Isha to an Evid. She doesn't go out with Kesef at all. An Evid we learned previously, we talked about it previously in the previous Shiurim, an Evid does go out with Kesef. So therefore we go with the Hekesh, and therefore Rebbe could hold, she gets freed partially, or the Evid or the Shifra gets partially freed with the Shtar. Rav Yosef says, Machlok is bekesef. The machlok between Rebbe and the Rabbanan is about money. The Rebbe savar have to learn himself to onifdasa peduya meina peduya. Right? It means the weird language. She's redeemed, but she's not redeemed. That means she could be partially redeemed with money. The Rabbanan savar did rhetorical lashon. And the Rabbanan say no. That hiftel onifdasa it repeats itself. It's just the way that people speak. People, for emphasis, they say the same word to. Right? They speak it twice. They say it twice. That's how people speak. It's not meant to actually convey that she's partially redeemed. Ava b'shtar divrei kol lo kana. But everyone agrees that a man saying half a slave with the get sheker doesn't work. Meisive, you have a question on Rav Yosef's interpretation of Rabbi Yisrael. Mashachar chatzi avdo b'shtar. If you're mashachar half of an end with a shtar, Rebbe omer kana. Rebbe says it works. Chachamim lo kana. So you see, Rebbe says about shtar, it does work half. He says no one, according to nobody, it works. Tiyufta de Rav Yosef, Tiyufta. The Gemara says it is indeed a refutation of Rav Yosef. Lema b'shtaru the pligi of a kesef lo pligi. Sorry, b'shtaru the pligi of a kesef lo pligi. Right, this Brisa says they argue at a shtar, but doesn't mention him at kesef. Lema to have Tiyufta de Rav Yosef betarti. Rav Yosef says they argue about kesef. Amalcha Rav Yosef, Yosef will respond to you. Pligi b'shtar v'udim and kesef. They argue on both accounts. Right, Rebbe says both through a shtar and kesef you can emancipate half an Evid. And the Rabbanan say both through shtar and kesef you can't. The reason they argue about shtar, not kesef, the Rebbe. Teacher, the Rebbe says even a shtar works to emancipate half the Evid. So why don't they argue about kesef? We rather teach a novelty about the Rabbanan, and the halacha presumably follows the Rabbanan. Teach you that even kesef doesn't work to partially emancipate an Evid. We'd rather teach Rebbe because Rebbe is teaching a heter. We'd rather teach about heterim. Rebbe, even a shtar works to matir half the Evid. Tashma, v'hafte. The Brisa says v'hafte yachol l'kol. You might think she's completely redeemed. The shifcha knainis. Hamadam or lonif dasa. The pasuk then continues. She's not redeemed. Lonif dasa yachol l'kol. You might think she's not redeemed at all. Hamadam or v'hafte, but it says that she was redeemed. Hakes abduya me'en abduya. Bekesef v'shav kesef. She's redeemed but not completely redeemed. Meaning with money. Part of her is redeemed with money and part of her is not. I only know that it works to redeem a shifcha knainis with money. B'shtar minayin. How do you know you can emancipate her with a shtar? Talmud Lomar v'hafte lo nifdasa o chufsha lo nishilna. Right? It says, talks about money, and then it talks about chufsha as a star gets shikar, it wasn't given to her. Ulahalon umer kasav lach seva krisos. And it says by Gittin nashim, right? You're ready for a seva krisos. Malahalam b'shtar, just like over there, so the get shikar. Afkan b'shtar also by a shivcha kanayim, she's free with a star. Only ala chetzio. How do you? I only know chetzio b'kasav ukula b'shtar, right? Hafte lo does talk about half money. Chufsha it doesn't say half chufsha; it says the whole chufsha. Chetzio b'shtar minayin. How do you know that even part of her can be free with a star? Talmud lo hafte lo nifdasa o chufsha lo nishilna. Makish star lekesef. They're written right next to each other. There's juxtaposition. Makesef ben kula ben chetzio. Just like kesef works even partially, afshtar not ben kula ben chetzio. The star works partially. Bishlam, this Bryce makes sense to Rav Yosef, Basar di Sosef. After, right, he refuted him, right? So according to Rav Yosef now, we're just saying that both Rebbe and Rabbanan argue in both cases. Rabbanan say you can never have partial emancipation, and Rebbe says both through Shtar and Kesef. So Hamani, Rebbe here, this Bryce that says both Shtar and Kesef work, it's Rebbe. The whole Bryce fits according to Rebbe. El the Rabbah. According to Rabbah, who says that the Rebbe and the Rabbanan only argue by Shtar, but everyone agrees by Kesef that you could have partial emancipation. Reisha Divrei Akol, the beginning when it's talking about Kesef, that Kesef works partially, that's according to Rabbanan and Rebbe. The Seifa Rebbe, and the Seifa would just be Rebbe, right, which says Shtar works partially. Amalcha Rabbah says back to you in Reisha Divrei Akol, the Seifa Rebbe, even though it's a little hard to say this, but that's what we're going to have to say. Rav Ashi Amar Rebbe. Rashi is a more simpler answer. Yes, we don't have to say the Reisha is the Rabbanan and Rebbe. This Brisa was taught by Rebbe, and Rebbe, right, the Rabbanan happened to agree with him in the Reisha, but it's all Rebbe, and then just the Rebbe taught this Brisa. Elam Nisan, the Gemara says, but our Mishnah, the Tani, Mishnah Chetzia ben Chorin, right, he's half an Eved, half ben Chorin. That means he's partially free. Bishlam ala Rabbah, according to Rabbah, Mukim Laba Kestev, Divrei Akol. You can say our Mishnah makes sense, both according to the Rabbanan and Rebbe. We like to say our Mishnah makes sense according to as many times as possible. It was talking about he's partially free with money. Elul Rav Yosef, according to Rav Yosef, Lema Rebbe he v'lo Rabbanan. Are we going to have to say that it's Rebbe, not the Rabbanan, right? Because according to the Rabbanan, according to Rebbe, it works well both Kesef and Shtar. Right? Our Mishnah doesn't say how he was freed, so it says half Kesef, half Ben Chorin. According to the Rabbanan, it doesn't work, right? Say the whole Mishnah, Rebbe and Rabbanan and they argue completely, both by Kesef and Shtar. So we say our Mishnah follows Rebbe, but according to Rav Yosef, right? We'd rather say our Mishnah is the Rabbanan. Why we want to say it's Rebbe? It would be strange if there's a way that it works according to the Rabbanan. Why don't we start with the Rabbanan? Why didn't the Mishnah specify Kesef and be like the Rabbanan? It's going to say it's Rebbe he v'lo Rabbanan. Amar Ravina answers the Eved top of Mem Bezim Al. The Eved shall shtein shofin divrei akol. Mishnah is not talking about what we've been talking about until now. Up until now, we're talking about one master who owns a whole Eved or a whole Shifcha Kanainis. He's partially freeing them. He's giving they're worth $100, or he gives a get Shikha for half of them. Here we're talking, our Mishnah is talking about where the slave was owned by two masters, and one of them completely freed him. So that, everyone agrees, both Rebbe and the Rabbanan, with a Shtar, that would work. That would work. You can free half of your Eved, but you can't free your partner's half. And that's what it's talking about, and which is very different than what we've been talking about until now. We'll stop over here. Stay tuned for Iyad Ben Sion, where I want to talk today about what the Mishnah discusses. The reason they made this takana, someone's a Chatzi Eved, Chatzi Ben Chorin. He's somebody that, like we just said, has two masters. One freed him, one didn't free him. We forced the other master to free him so he can become Piri Rivya. Shenemar, Lo So Rosh. Why didn't they Shenemar Pruvu? If he's a free man, he's going to be a man. He'll obligate in the mitzvah of Pruvu. That's the mitzvah. That's mitzvah of the Raisa. This is a pasuk of the Nevi'im. Why does it say that? We'll talk about that even with Ben Sion coming up next.